Hi guys, welcome to another amazing episode of the Amanda Show. See, this year has been very interesting, especially this past week. So if you notice, I'm not shooting where I usually shoot. I went somewhere. But because of how important these conversations are, that is the reason why I just have to set this up. So bear with me. I know it looks different to you guys, but please bear with me. Now, if you're just joining us, my name is Amanda Akalono. And on this show, we discuss everything geopolitics from an African perspective. And 3 topics we'll be discussing today. The first one is Donald Trump he came into office, you guys already know. And one of the first things that he did was that he signed an executive order putting a stop to all foreign aid. I have seen a lot of Africans lose their minds over this. And even some African governments, leaders of countries have lost their minds over this and they're getting upset. But I like that he stops the funding. We'll discuss that in this episode. And from there, we are going to move into what just took place in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So many of you know that the M23 rebel group, they took the strategic city of Goma. They've taken the city of Goma. And now ever since this happened, I've been spending a lot of time thinking and asking myself, how did we get here and what can be done to put an end to what is going on in the DRC once and for all? Because this whole conflict in the DRC has been raging on for decades, and it seems that nothing has been done or nothing has been able to bring a lasting and just peace in the situation. So I'm going to share my 2 cents about what I think can help change the situation that we see in the Democratic Republic of Congo today. And our third topic for today is Donald Trump again. Yes, ever since he came into the White House, he came in to break things. As well as he's breaking things and he's giving suggestions. Some make sense, some do not make sense, like one of the things that I want us to discuss about on this show. So Donald Trump stated that they have intentions to move the population in Gaza, move them into Egypt and some other countries, which has sparked an outrage in Egypt. I want us to take a look at this because, some people are getting upset at Trump. Oh, why is Trump saying this? Why is Trump saying this? But this is not the first time that an American government have suggested this. Remember back in 2023, where after October 7th, when Israel went on this campaign, it's currently engaging in Gaza, although there's a ceasefire for now. When Israel went on this campaign, one of the things Anthony Blinken tried to do was that he tried to get Egypt and some other Arab states like Jordan to take the population of Gaza. He tried to do it, so this is not a Trump idea. I'm actually suspecting it's coming from Netanyahu, and Trump is just parroting what Netanyahu is discussing with him. All this we'll be talking about in this episode of The Amanda Show. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everyone around you so that we can amplify Africa's voice in the global conversations. I mentioned in the last episode that our Africa Media Movement is now live. Yes, we are using this to pull Africans who are interested in media together so that we can discuss and amplify Africa's voice so that Africans will know its geopolitical and its economical interest in a multipolar world. So if you want to join me on this journey, please, you're going to see the link in the description. Sign up and join me. And finally, if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link now in the description, and it's also on the screen. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. Now let's get talking. Okay guys, the Orange Man is back. And when the Orange Man came, when he was campaigning, he threatened to break a lot of things. And some people thought he was joking, some people thought he was serious. But it's clear that when the Americans voted Donald Trump back into office, they voted him to break things, and he's breaking things. This week, one of the things that Donald Trump has broken with an executive order is foreign funding. You will be surprised the amount of money of American taxpayers' money, the amount that goes into doing things in other countries that do not necessarily benefit the countries, neither does it benefit the American people. For example, this whole USAID thing, this thing that they say, oh, America is giving aid with the USAID. It's one of the things that Donald Trump stopped. In fact, when Donald Trump put a stop to foreign funding completely across the board, he made 2 exceptions, Israel and Egypt. Israel because US and Israel are tied at the hip. Egypt because Egypt is I think that it's because of Israel that he still maintained funding for Egypt. So I want us to look at this USAID thing now. Like I said, I'm really excited that Donald Trump put a stop to this funding, but a lot of people are upset. Let me tell you why I'm excited. Number one, this funding from the US government with USAID, right? In case you don't know, USAID is the regime change arm of the CIA. So it is the organization or the institution that the CIA uses to perpetrate its regime change operations around the world. Donald Trump just cut his life supply, which is money. Which, although it's just for 90 days, I'm hoping it takes longer. So number one is the regime change operations. See, many times all these protests you see, that these protests take place and they get to overthrow a government or a leader or do something. Protests need money. For a protest to be successful, in quotes, and the success of the protest is the ability to overthrow a government. But for a protest to be successful, in quotes, it needs to have staying power. It needs to take on for a while. Bringing people, I know sometimes we in Africa, we see protests and we say, okay, we are joining it. But no, that's not what I'm discussing. Many times, on many occasions, there are people who are paid to protest. Where did they get their funding from? USAID. Is this thing that Donald Trump just put a stop to? No, I'm not saying that he did it for a good thing. I'm looking at it for how does this benefit we in Africa? So for the next 90 days, every plan, every intended funding of protests through the USAID is coming to a stop. Is on hold, is on pause. That's number one. Number two is media. Many of these media institutions that you see all over the place, right? These media houses, and they're parroting a certain narrative, right? That benefits some people or benefits a country and doesn't benefit another. It's funded by the people that want them to say such a thing. In Africa, let me give an example. In Africa, right? A lot of media institutions in Africa, media platforms in Africa, they run on grants. Because journalism is not really profitable. Journalism, maybe media, right? Yeah, you can argue that it's profitable here, but journalism itself is not really a profitable endeavor. So for people to keep posturing as journalists, they need money from somewhere. USAID. I told you last year that there was this report that I read, and the report stated that the United States was funding media platforms within Africa that I think, was it just Africa, maybe around the world, I can't remember, but since we're talking in the context of Africa, let me put the spotlight on Africa. So United States had a program funding media platforms that were going to write bad news about China and many of these Chinese development projects across Africa. And for every bad news about China you write, you get $1,000. Now, an African could see, maybe go to a certain media outfits that they've come to respect and love over the years, and they're reading it, and all they keep saying is, China did this bad thing, China did that bad thing, this Chinese is bad, this Chinese is bad, blah, blah, blah. You think that you're reading the news, but you do not know that you're reading a narrative that is funded by the US State Department through USAID. Through USAID. So the more you keep reading things like that, you keep seeing things like that, it gives you a certain ideology, a certain perspective about China, and it's not going to be a favorable perspective. Listen, I've said this several times on the show. While we have kinetic warfare, which is hot war, where we use guns and bombs and drones and missiles, all of those things, we also have non-kinetic warfare, which is information warfare. I've asked you on this show several times, why do you think that US propaganda is supported by the Pentagon? Because it's a military, it's war. Because it's war. Propaganda is war. Media warfare is war. Media narrative is war. Because while there is hard power, and everyone says, oh, I'm a military superpower, I'm this, I'm that, that's good. But there is this power of, you cannot overemphasize the importance of soft power. And that is what media gives you. Media gives you soft power. The reason that we are still hooked on American culture today in the nations of the world is not because of the US dollar or because of American military. We are hooked on American culture today because we consume American music, we watch American movies, we love American fashion, right? We use American technology. All of these things, this is soft power. This is soft power. This is where media comes into play. And so now you understand the reason why I keep saying that one of the things that we need to get together to do as Africans, if we are truly interested in liberating Africa for sovereignty in this multipolar world, if you're really interested about it, one of the things we cannot overlook is media. I said before, if you want to join me on this journey, is to enlighten Africans so that Africans will know their geopolitical and economic interests in the multipolar world. Because when every nation right now is focusing on myself, America is saying America first, right? We are seeing it, the same thing taking place across Europe, and every nation is saying myself. Africa needs to understand that Africa also has an interest in the geopolitical world, in geopolitics and in the multipolar world. Africa does not exist for everybody to come here to have a field day. That is not why we exist. We exist to make Africa a livable place, a beautiful place, an inspiring place, and a prosperous place for the people who live here. Do you get me? So that is, I'm so excited about Donald Trump putting a stop to this, although it's just for 90 days. I hope he extends it, really do hope, but it's receiving a lot of backlash. I don't know if he's going to extend it. But for the next 90 days, you're going to find out that many of these media platforms, these social media channels you listen to, you take the news, this influencer that you come to like, you'll be surprised that many of them are funded by the US State Department to give you American talking points so that they paint America in a really good light, and then America's geopolitical enemies, say like China and Russia, they make them look like the boogeyman. That's what this thing is. That's what this thing is. So it's in our interests. Not just that in the next 90 days, every regime change operation plan is put on hold, which is one way to look at it. The second way to look at it is media. Media, I don't want to mention names, but since Donald Trump made this announcement, I have seen a lot of media, so-called independent media platforms. All the while, I was thinking they were independent. But many of these independent media platforms, they're not asking for, oh, give us money, help us. Oh, the money that we're getting from, I didn't even know they were funded by USAID. But the money we're getting from USAID, they're not going to get it anymore. At least for the next 90 days, they can't pay salaries. But they told us they were independent. Do you get me? So the only way, this is why you need to understand why media is of vital importance for we in Africa at such a time as this. And this is not just an American thing. I told you that while Macron of France mentioned that they are going to drastically reduce the presence of French troops across Africa, one of the things that Macron said we're going to do, I'm paraphrasing now, was that they were going to invest in media in Africa. They were going, meaning that France, the government of France, is going to be paying for publicity, but it's going to be posted in such a way that, oh, this is a news story, but you're going to be seeing news stories that are going to paint France in a good light. That's what you're going to see. In fact, when I made mention of that, someone made a comment on that video, and I don't even know why it skipped my mind. The person reminded me that the biggest satellite cable network provider in Africa, right, is being purchased by a French company. And I mean, once he said that, I don't know if it was he or she, but once that person made that comment, I'm like, this is true. Now, I'm not saying, I know it's a private company, that is a French private company that is purchasing it, but I'm just telling you now how this thing begins to align with Macron's plan. Macron's plan to position France in a different light, to paint France in a different light in Africa. It's so convenient that the company that is buying Africa's biggest cable provider is a French company. How interesting. How interesting. So now let's come back to Donald Trump and his stopping this US funding to every nation in the world other than Israel and Egypt. Another thing that now a lot of people have, the reason why they keep saying this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, is because USAID has been funding several health related things in Africa. They've gotten upset that, oh, now that Donald Trump has stopped funding, the cases of AIDS and HIV in South Africa is going to get way out of control, because the medicine, not just in South Africa, although South Africa is the major one everyone keeps talking about, but not just in South Africa, across Africa, because the medicine that these people who are HIV positive, the medicine they take, which has helped them to be able to put the whole sickness under control, and now they can't even spread it to another person. That medication that they take is funded by the United States, which is true. So they are saying now that Donald Trump has put a stop to this for the next 90 days, many more Africans, especially in South Africa, many of these Africans are going to have who are HIV positive, are going to have their situation worsen. Yes, which is true. My question is, how is it that in 2025, African states are still acting like welfare queens? How is it that with all the scientific minds in South Africa, with all the scientific minds scattered across Africa, African countries are still relying on United States funding to help them with their sick population? Whether it's HIV, whether it's malaria, whether it's tuberculosis, anything. So the medicine that your people are taking, America is buying it for you. How are you a sovereign? How can you not be asking for sovereignty? No, because if you ask for sovereignty, you have to do the whole thing, everything that pertains to being a sovereign nation. Everything. It's just like saying, oh, I want to be an adult, I'm an adult, respect me as an adult, and you don't do the things that adults do. Why should anybody take you seriously? Why should anybody take you seriously? So that's my question with this Africa. Sometimes a lot of things happen, right? And you don't realize how much things are happening. Until Donald Trump put a stop to this funding, I didn't even realize the extent to which United States is actually funding many African countries. No. And then when United States come in and they say, okay, they want this leader in your country, not that leader, we start getting angry that they are interfering in our domestic affairs. When you're taking US money, okay, let me get it. You want their money. You don't want them to interfere. You're not yet ready for independence. You're not yet ready for sovereignty. You're not a sovereign nation. As long as the money, the funds of an outside country is bankrolling your country, you cannot demand sovereignty. You can't. After all, they are feeding your population. Oh, you're telling me that a country like South Africa, with all its wealth, and I mean population wealth, with all its people, with all its resources, a country like South Africa cannot fully take care of its citizens, including in health? Is that what you're telling me? A country like Nigeria, you come out to see the giant of Africa, you're big, we are 220 million, you're breathing fire, say don't interfere in our domestic affairs, blah, 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 blah. America is still bankrolling you. United States is still funding your existence. You're not ready. In fact, if not for anything, right, of Donald Trump pausing this USAID funding, right, to every country around the world except Israel and Egypt for the next 30 days. If not for anything, why I want this whole funding to be stopped, or why I want it to be extended beyond 90 days. If not for anything, is because African nations, you need to buckle up. Because sometimes, they say, oh, give Africa aid, Africa needs aid, blah, 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 and all of that nonsense, right? There is no incentive. There is no incentive for your leaders and your country to now take themselves seriously. What's the incentive? What's the incentive for South Africa, the leadership of South Africa, to do something about making South Africa strong in the health sector, to be able to, if not create the drugs by themselves to administer to their population, at least to be able to buy the drugs. At least to be able to buy the drugs. What's the incentive if America will keep doing it? You might as well fold your arms and say, all right, US should take care of that. That's an American body. But American taxpayers are doing it. Why? What is their business with you? Did they say it's United States of America / South Africa / Nigeria / Gabon / Egypt / what is that? Even if the United States government wants to do it, you as an African country that is serious about your sovereignty, you should say no. That is one of the things that Burkina Faso did. He said, Ibrahim Traore said, no more, we don't want aid. Don't give us IMF, don't give us anything. I don't know if that cut across all boards, I'm not sure. But that was one of the things Ibrahim Traore said is in Burkina Faso. Because the more that another country is literally subsidizing your existence as a country, why are you demanding sovereignty? You might as well be a colony. You might as well be a colony. So I'm so excited that Donald Trump has done this. And I hope that this goes beyond 90 days so that African leaders will now strap up and say, okay, because when they see that source of funding coming in, they'll realize, and they found out that it stopped, right? They'll say, it has stopped. They'll say, all right, now it's time to work. It's either, there's this thing about survival, especially when you're faced with a threat, right? It's either you fight, or you flee. That when humans are faced with a threat, existential threat, it's either you fight or you flee. Okay, let's bring this down to nations. Now that the money supply has been cut off, now that money supply has been cut off, and I really hope Donald Trump makes this thing beyond 90 days. In fact, it should be permanent, because American taxpayers should not be funding African countries. It should not. That is why why shouldn't they get angry when you're telling them not to select leaders for you? If I'm America, I'll get angry too, because I'm funding you. I'm funding you. You can't be coming to tell me nonsense. I'm funding your existence. So like I'm saying, let's bring this back to country level. Now that African leaders and African nations have been faced with this existential threat of funding from the United States, we've gotten to the point where we either have to now get serious and think of how do we survive. Because if the US can be cut off like this, Europe can soon be cut off. The funding that comes from Europe can soon be cut off. The funding, because I'm also beginning to notice, and this is one of the conversations I want to have on this show, I'm beginning to notice that even Qatar is having and UAE has UAE aid for Africa. What is this? How can Africa be running on aid in 2025? What is this? That's why they don't take us seriously when we are discussing in global affairs. They don't take us seriously. After all, they are funding you. The food you eat, they are doing it. The accommodation you have, they are doing it. Even to your mosquito nets, they are doing it. To your mosquito nets, they are doing it. The water you drink, they are doing it. Why should they take you seriously? I hope that not just United States aid. I want every aid to come to stop. Every country should use their money for themselves, because it is not America's job to bankroll you. And even this whole aid something that they talk about, which is not something I'm ignorant of, the fact that many of the times this aid that is given to this so-called aid given to African countries don't get to the people. Leaders take it. So sometimes the money you see that your leader took and went to go and buy one nice Mercedes, or went to go and buy one house in London, or went to get a vacation home in Dubai, all this money, this is aid money. This is it. And the people who are giving this aid, they realize it. They realize it. They know that it's not getting to the people, because there've been a lot of reports on it. So they cannot tell me that they are unaware. They know that it's not getting to the people. But they leave the leaders to take the aid and consume the aid so that they can keep the same system. The leaders will allow them come into the country to do what they want, right? And the leaders in turn get the aid to enrich themselves. Donald Trump has started something. He has set some people will say it's a very bad precedent. I think it's a good precedent. I think it's a good thing. Not just with United States. I want this to go across the board. Every nation, no more, don't fund Africa anymore. It's either Africans will decide for themselves to fight and become truly sovereign to the extent of funding every part of your governance and your existence. It's either African nations decide to be truly sovereign, or they fold their arms and let what wants to happen. But the most important thing is Donald Trump should stop the funding, and he should extend it to forever, no more. At least if he says, because another administration can come in and do something entirely different. But as soon as he's here for the next 4 years, no more funding. It's a good thing. Let us learn. Europe should also do no more funding. The Arabs the Middle Eastern monarchies should say no more funding. Everybody, India, everybody don't fund Africa anymore. Use your money for your country. Use it for your population and your citizens. Let Africa be forced to get its act together. So let me know what you think about Donald Trump putting a stop to foreign aid. And you'll be surprised that it's not just America has been funding. Across Latin America, across Europe, across the Middle East, everywhere America's money. America is okay. Use your money for your people. Use it for your population and your citizens. So let me know what you think about Donald Trump putting a stop to this whole funding thing in Africa and across the world. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your family, your friends, everybody, so that we can push Africa's interest and the African narrative on a global scale. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link now in the description, and it's also on the screen. And finally, and you can see what United States, if there's a reason United States is funding media outlets in Africa, because they know media is important. It's warfare. There's a reason France is beginning to do it. There's a reason Europe, the EU, is doing this thing. It's because media is important. So if you want to join us on our African media movement, with which we are going to enlighten Africans on their geopolitical and economic interests in the multipolar world, the link is in the description and it's also on the screen. Many times on this show, we've discussed what is going on in Sudan and why what's going on in Sudan is not just a genocide, but the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today. Maybe you can only compare it to what's going on in Gaza, because what's going on in Gaza is crazy. But for now, there's been a ceasefire. We thank God for that. So, but as we talk about this, we kind of forget that other than Sudan, there's another fire raging on in Africa, and it's in the DRC. And maybe because this has happened for a very long time, so it's somehow it has become monotonous, like we're now used to it. Well, this week, the situation in the DRC escalated. And it escalated to a place that a lot of people did not foresee. The rebel group M23 successfully took the town of Goma. Now, Goma, I believe, is in Eastern DRC. I think it's in Eastern DRC. Goma is a mining. Goma is rich in minerals. So it's like a mining hub for all kind of minerals you can think about. I think there's also an airport there, an important airport there. So the M23 rebels have taken control of the city of Goma, which has now made a lot of people, even like myself, look back again into what's going on in the DRC. Now, you've probably heard that M23 rebels are the bad guys. M23 rebels are supported by Kagame. Kagame is a dictator. Kagame is a bad person. That's not the conversation I want to have today. What I want to discuss, first of all, I want us to look at where this thing is coming from, right? And then I want to profess solutions. I want to profess solutions, what I think that we should be doing now. Because this thing going on in the DRC has every likelihood of escalating into a wider war. In case you may have missed it, during this whole thing, I believe 15 South Africans, because there's a South African defense, a South African military contingent in the DRC. They are there to help keep the peace. I'm wondering, keep the peace. Is there really peace in the DRC, if you're being honest? But they say they are there to keep the peace. Okay, now when the whole thing escalated, and when the M23 rebels were taking over the city of Goma, something that 15 South African troops were killed in this whole thing, and correctly enough, it upsets the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. It upset him, and then he said some things about Kagame, and Kagame now said, "Oh, that Rwanda, if it comes to it, Rwanda is ready to go into a military thing with South Africa. Like, in fact, Rwanda is ready to go to war with South Africa." He had said that before. And even prior to, I think some months ago, he had even mentioned that he's ready to go to war with the DRC. So I said that for us to realize that this thing can escalate into a wider war in Africa that can bring in countries in East Africa and Southern Africa, because the DRC is not just part of the East Africa bloc, it's also part of the Southern Africa bloc. Right? So that's why I said I want to provide some solutions that I think can come in handy now. But first, before I get into that, I want us to discuss this whole thing with the DRC. We know that the DRC was a creation of King Leopold, the genocidal maniac King Leopold. He's the one that cut the hands of the Congolese because people did not reach their rubber quota and things like that. So anyway, it was created by, and he's also the mastermind behind the Berlin Conference of 1884, where Africa was chopped up and fake borders were created across Africa to serve European interests. He was the mastermind of that. So the DRC was created by him for his interests, and things got bad here and there because of the backlash to what it was wicked, the inhumane acts that was carried out in the DRC. It moved from him under Belgian control, all of those things. But I don't want to get into that. I want to talk about this whole M23 rebels now. Now, based on these fake European borders that were drawn across Africa, the Tutsis are an ethnic group, an indigenous group in Africa, around East Africa. Now, the Tutsis are in Rwanda. They were also the victims of the Rwanda genocide, where about 800,000 Tutsis, 800,000 to 1 million Tutsis were killed. Tutsis and moderate Hutsis were killed across Rwanda in 1994. So they were the victims. So the Tutsis are in Rwanda, but we also have some Tutsis in the DRC because of this line that was drawn across Africa by the Europeans. It's the same thing if you look in a country like Nigeria now. You see that there are Fulani people, Fulanis in Nigeria, there are Fulanis in Niger, there are Yoruba people in Nigeria, there are Yoruba people in Benin Republic, and on like that. So the Europeans did not even bother to come to look at the place to at least cap them within their ethnicity, but that's not what I want to talk about. So this is how the Tutsis, we have Tutsis in Rwanda, we have Tutsis in the DRC. But somehow, these Tutsis in the DRC they felt like the government of the DRC was not furthering their interests. They were doing things to undermine them. All of those dissatisfaction, that's how the M23 group was created. Interestingly, which is very sad, imagine the government of the DRC, right? I'm not saying it's this particular government, but I'm just saying for a while, they keep saying, oh, you people are from Rwanda, go to Rwanda, because just imagine you telling your countrymen that they should go to another country, they're from another country. I mean, well, the people in Rwanda, the government of Rwanda is saying, no, these people are the DRC. It's just as if the government of Benin Republic is telling the Yoruba people in Benin Republic, go to Nigeria, you are Nigerians, you are not from Benin. That does not make any sense. Right? That does not make any sense. So I know that there are nuances to this, so it's it's complicated, right? But this is as basic and as easy as I can summarize the whole thing. But please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in certain things. So the government of the DRC has been telling this ethnic group to go to Rwanda. They're from Rwanda, blah, blah, blah. And things have escalated like this. But now that we are here, and like I said, there's a high chance that this thing can escalate. What do we do? I know that there's been mediation attempts by Angola. The president of Angola has tried to mediate this thing. Even, I think sometime last year, I thought the mediations were making headway. I thought it was going somewhere, but apparently I was wrong. I also know that we have the Nairobi process where Ruto's government has tried to mediate. And I give him credit for that. I give Angola credit for that. They've tried to mediate this whole thing, but to no avail. Several times, I've heard that the leadership of the DRC and the leadership of Rwanda were going to meet. But I think even with the Angola process, the one that was mediated by the president of Angola, I think that it started off by discussion with the foreign ministers. Then from the foreign ministers, the idea was for it to escalate and reach President Felix Tshisekedi, and I hope I pronounced his name properly, please. If I did it, please, I'm sorry. And President Paul Kagame. So Tshisekedi of the DRC and Paul Kagame of Rwanda, it was starting with the foreign ministers and it was going to conclude with the leadership. But then everything kept falling apart. I understand that I'm guessing that the president of DRC is upset because he feels like Kagame of Rwanda, because Kagame of Rwanda is supporting these M23 rebels in the DRC, which is why this rebel group has been able to continue for as long as it has continued. Because if it wasn't getting funding and support from the government of Rwanda, it's not going to have come this far. So I get that he's upset, that the leadership of the DRC is upset, right? But you don't use emotions to do politics. On many occasions, you need to be able to remove your emotions to make a good decision, not just for your country, but for the wider region. So no matter how much Tshisekedi of the DRC is upset, he has been upset for a very long time. And his anger all along has not resolved the issue facing his country. Okay, now that he has lost the city of Goma, although I read somewhere that this is not the first time that Goma is fallen, that Goma has fallen before. So I read that somewhere, right? But now that Goma is not within his control, is his country any better off? I'm saying this because one of the reasons why this whole thing has stalled like this is because the leadership of the DRC is upset. In fact, as soon as the city of Goma was taken, I saw reports. There were several reports that said, okay, that the two leaders, that is Kagame and Tshisekedi, they've agreed to have a conversation. And I'm like, good. Can we just have this conversation and move on with this thing? Because until the leadership is talking, there is no resolution, right? Then I saw that before like a few hours, before I could even discuss that with someone, within a few hours, the leadership of the DRC had pulled out and said, no, they're not having any talks. You cannot do things like this. You can't use emotions to do politics. Do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the situation in Syria. Between Assad and Erdogan. Erdogan must have upset Assad because Erdogan and Assad were friends. I think their family members, they vacationed together on several occasions. But when the United States under Obama moved against Assad, Erdogan supported the move against Assad and called for the overthrow of the Assad government. So it upset Assad personally because he assumed, this is me just making my assumptions, he probably thought that he and Erdogan are friends, so he didn't expect that from Erdogan, right? So, but I know that sometime from that 2022, even before 2022, but when I started following the situation closely, from that 2022, on several occasions, Erdogan had asked to have a dialogue with Assad. Even when Syria was welcomed back into the Arab League, right? Erdogan had asked several occasions to have a conversation, let them talk, because even if Assad was upset at Erdogan, and rightly so, there were still things that the two countries, that's Syria and Turkey, they needed to discuss. They had interest, they needed to hash out. But Assad kept refusing. In 2023, Erdogan kept asking, let us have discussions. They even the Russians had even asked Assad to come in. Russia was going to mediate the talks. Assad kept refusing. Then we saw what happened in 2024. Towards the end of the year, the Assad government fell. Look at the state of Syria today. Head-chopping jihadists. Al-Qaeda, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, is in charge in Syria. Is it better for Syria, this situation? Now, the Christians in Syria are not safe. Other people are not safe. We are seeing terrible pictures, terrible videos coming out of Syria, of former people who were within the government. I saw one man was tied to the tree, they stoned him to death. Gruesome images like that. And I'm asking, the situation in Syria today, is it any better? Only if Assad had spoken with Erdogan. Now, nothing they would have, it's like going to work like magic. You sit down and everything is just perfect. No, that's not the way it works, right? But as you begin to have talks, there's more likelihood of bringing a solution to the issue when you have talks than when you say, no, I'm not talking to you. I mentioned the situation of Erdogan and Assad because I am getting the same vibe between Tshisekedi and Kagame. Kagame has upset you. Okay, let's take that. You're very angry, right? But the more you keep ignoring, things can get out of hand. And get out of hand to the extent that it will not now work in the interest of you. That is the president of the DRC, Tshisekedi. It won't work in his interest. Neither will it work in the interest of the DRC or the interest of the region. So the most important thing which is why I'm talking about what I think is the solution. Instead of pointing fingers, we've pointed fingers, Kagame bad, okay, Tshisekedi bad, incompetent leader, Kagame dictator, blah, blah, blah. All those things, we've done it how many years now? It's not resolving anything. Even before these two on the scene, there were other people who were still pointing fingers. Do you understand? So it's not resolving anything. The most important thing we should do now is dialogue. Because if you look through history, at the end of the day, after they use all their bombs, they use all their missiles, they use all their drones and all their guns and everything they have. After you use all those things, even if you look at World War II, where the United States used nuclear weapons, after all of those things, the situation still came from where? Dialogue. You will still talk. The only way to resolve conflict is to engage in. That's what diplomacy is. Diplomacy is dialogue. Diplomacy is dialogue. So what am I suggesting? That African nations, including Rwanda and the DRC, we need to get sophisticated with diplomacy. We need to talk. You cannot say because he annoyed me, therefore I'm not going to talk to him, and you scatter everything. It does not benefit you. It does not benefit your country. It does not benefit the region. It does not benefit Africa. All right, now see those people who died. Those civilians who have died for nothing, like for something that could have just. I'm not saying the first time you sit down to talk is the first time, it's going to be the time everything is resolved. No, but the more that you talk and you say, okay, we'll discuss about this next time, the more you keep talking and talking and talking, the more likely it is that you arrive at a solution. All right, we're talking about the DRC. So I was watching a video of Piano Lumumba, and he said something that caught my attention. He said, as we are discussing the DRC, the M23 rebels, but let's not forget that many researchers have produced research showing that there are over 100 rebel groups in the DRC. There are over 100. in the DRC. M23 is just one. And many of these rebel groups, they have become militant for mining companies. So mining companies will get them, right, to live, to cause chaos. So as the chaos is going on, they can be mining and be taking all the wealth of the DRC. So if you say you are mad at Kagame because of the M23 rebels, okay, so therefore we want to go to war because of the M23 rebels. Minus the M23 rebels, we have over 100 and something others. What are we going to do to fix that? What are we going to do to fix that? So this fixing the situation in the DRC is of utmost importance, and the way to fix it is diplomacy. The way to do it is diplomacy. We need to talk. We need sophisticated diplomats in Africa. Because if we had such a level of sophistication within the East Africa bloc, within the Southern Africa bloc, even in the African Union, I don't think there's I reserve my comments. I wanted to say something about the African Union, but I reserve my comments. Even within the African Union, if we had sophisticated diplomats, many of the nonsenses we see across the continent, okay, now that we're talking about DRC, Rwanda, many of these things we are seeing, we're not going to be seeing them. How can a leader? It reminds me of Biden and co. Oh, we're not going to talk to Putin because Putin is a dictator. Okay. You're sending all your bombs and all your weapons and you're just killing Ukrainians. Killing, you're wasting, now that you did this thing, the Russians have been able to have an access into American military technology. Now that you've done this thing, at first, the Russians did not have access to the Patriot missiles. Now they have seen Patriot missiles for what it really is. They've seen it, they've seen everything. Because, we're not going to talk to dictator Putin. I remember when, what's his name? This Viktor Orban of Hungary, when Hungary assumed leadership of the EU and Viktor Orban went to talk to Putin, they almost ripped him apart in the EU. Like, why are you talking to Putin? What is wrong with you people? Diplomacy is, that's why you're diplomat. Diplomacy is conversation. It's talks. It's talks. All right, now, after everything they did, Russia has won in Ukraine. Russia won. I think that's one of the reasons that Trump will probably look at it and just remove his face. Because it was a disaster. It was not need. All they had to do was to understand that Russia had its own security interests. Right? Russia had its own security interests. That was all they had to understand. And discuss it. And clear the air. But no, we don't discuss with dictators. We are seeing this is the same thing that we are seeing right now in Africa. No, we can't talk to Kagame. Kagame is a dictator. Okay. Where has that left you? You have lost your city of Goma. You've lost Goma. Where has that left you? That has allowed the breathing ground for more rebels in your country, destabilizing your country. Where has that left you? What did you gain? So instead of pulling out of talks, I understand that he's upset. I may not get it, but I do understand that Tshisekedi of the DRC is upset. But anger does not solve anything. So I'm suggesting, let us have dialogues, even within these blocks of East Africa, Southern Africa, and even the African Union. Let us insist, because until Tshisekedi has pressure, he may not come to the negotiating table. Until Kagame gets pressure, he may not come to. Although I've not heard Kagame say he does not want negotiations, but he may not come to the negotiating table. So we need to insist within ourselves that each of these leaders, the African Union should put pressure. It's not just saying, oh, we condemn the M23 rebel. We've been condemning them since. Like, they say insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. That's then Ruto went to call Macron. What is Ruto calling Macron for? What is Macron's business in what is going on in East Africa, in between Congo, DRC and Rwanda? What is the business of France? Right? As if no, Africa, we cannot get and resolve our situation, our issues within ourselves. So we have to put pressure. All this, we condemn M23 rebels. We ask them to leave the Goma. All those things are empty words. Nobody's going to answer you. You have been doing it since you did not fix anything. So the solution to what is going on in the DRC, at least the first step to a just and lasting peace in the DRC, is for talks. When we start talk, we talk today, we'll talk tomorrow, we'll talk the day after, we'll talk and I mean between the leadership, the highest level of leadership. That's how we get to a resolution. So let me know what you think about this whole chaos in the DRC. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everyone around you so that we can amplify Africa's voice in the global conversation. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. And finally, we have started our African media movement, Ukweli. If you want to join us to become a part of pushing the African narrative in a multipolar world, to enlighten Africa on their diplomatic, on their geopolitical, on their economic interest in a multipolar world, join Ukweli African Media Movement with the link in the description and also on the screen. Thank you so much. Like I said when I began this episode of the Amanda Show, I said that Donald Trump came into office to break things. In fact, America has voted him to break things, and things he has been breaking. Some things in the good way, I think. For example, the stopping of funding, America's funding for countries around the world. I think that's a good thing. And some things in the bad way. And it's the bad way I want to talk about now. So Trump made a statement that they are going to relocate the population of Gaza. They're going to remove them from their land and move them as if they're not people, as if they don't have a heritage. Anyway, he said they'll move them to Egypt and Jordan and some other countries in the region. And of course, and rightly so, this has sparked protests across Africa, including in Egypt. Now everyone is saying, oh, Trump. This is not a Trump idea. This is Netanyahu's idea. It's not a Trump idea. Trump is just parroting Netanyahu's dream. The goal, if what Israel did in Gaza is not clear enough, the goal is to completely remove ethnic cleansing, is to completely remove the population of Gaza. Because when Israel, after October 7th, when Israel started its military campaign in Gaza and bringing out buildings and killing civilians in the manner they did it, when Israel started that, Anthony Blinken went to Egypt. I remember that because I watched the video. Anthony Blinken went to Egypt. And when he went to Egypt, he told the Egyptians, one of the things he suggested to them was that they take the population of Gaza in. In fact, there was a time that they said, and he was doing this, coordinating this with other Arab countries. There was even a time I read a report that they were going to move the population of Gaza to the Sinai Desert. And in the Sinai Desert, that these people, Qatar was going to fund putting of tents in the Sinai Desert so that the population of Gaza would stay there. Israel said they want to remove the civilians so that they can completely destroy Hamas in Gaza. Then maybe later the civilians will come back. But everybody knows, when Anthony Blinken mentioned this to El-Sisi of Egypt, he completely pushed it. In fact, he almost scolded Anthony Blinken. I watched that video. It was, you can say he scolded Anthony Blinken because it's preposterous. And one of the things that Egyptian media were saying back then is that if they successfully remove the civilians from Gaza, Israel will never let them come back. That is how Israel will take Gaza too. Because, oh no, you may be saying, no, Israel just wants to kill Hamas. And once they get rid of Hamas, the population will come back. All right. So you may be saying that, oh, Egypt is just being, they're not very certain of what they're saying. The population will be allowed to come back. All right. Like Israel has not done this thing before. And let's not, so that's, having said that, I also saw, there was one time I saw, I think, was it Netanyahu himself? I'm not sure, but there was a video I saw about, oh, this could be Gaza. it was saying what Gaza could have been if not because of Hamas. And sometimes remember that when they say Hamas, they're not talking about that organization Hamas. If you listen to them, when they say Hamas, they mean everybody. All the Palestinians, they mean everybody's Hamas, right? So in that video, they were saying Gaza could have been a waterfront real estate property. Gaza could have been this, Gaza could have been that, Gaza could have been peaceful, blah, 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 blah. And that's when I understood what was going on, right? This looks to me, I could be wrong, I could be very wrong, but this looks to me like a land grab. This looks to me like a land grab. And that's why Israel used such a heavy hand to do this military campaign, because they wanted to frighten the people to run. And when you run away, they will come in and create the real estate paradise. But I wonder the kind of people who would even if let's say Israel successfully kicks the Palestinians out and they build their real estate paradise in Gaza, the people who will buy properties in that area, where's your conscience? But that's by the way. So Donald Trump just said the same thing that Anthony Blinken asked for back in 2023. Donald Trump just made the same statement, and as expected, the Egyptians have given the same answer, that there will be no relocation of the people of Gaza. That's their country. That is where they are from. That is their ethnic land. That is their historical land, their ancestral land. How can you say, because you're more powerful, because you're strong, because you're richer, you can just carry these people away and throw them away? Just carry them and throw them, as if they are not human beings. As if they are things, they are objects. You just move like a table, you move from one place to another. So if let's say Anthony Blinken had gotten to move millions of people from Gaza to the Sinai Desert, and Qatar creates tents, you put tents for them. As the disrespect. The disrespect. And I thought that so craziness ended with the Biden administration. Clearly not. This is why I said it is not a Trump idea or a Blinken idea or a Joe Biden idea. This is a Netanyahu idea. This is a Netanyahu position. So it didn't matter if it was the Democrats under Biden or the Republicans under Trump. It's the same thing Netanyahu is looking for. But anyhow you try to massage it and romance it, this is called ethnic cleansing. That's what it is. Ethnic cleansing, to grab land. That's what it is. Well, the Egyptians have refused it. And I said this is a bad idea, because if Egypt is already having economic issues. Maybe that's why Donald Trump said no matter what they are cutting off aid everywhere, they will not cut off aid for Egypt, because Egypt is really a core part. Egypt is a core part of Israel's normalization in the Middle East. Let me put it like that. Without Egypt, there are a lot of things that may not turn out so nicely. So now, Egypt has been experiencing some economic issues for a long time now, for a while, right? Think about it. You in America, one of the things that Donald Trump is clamoring for in the US is no to immigration. You want to remove the people who came into your country illegally, that they are coming to change the landscape of the United States. They want to make United States like third world country. You have complained. Okay. Moving the people of Gaza to Egypt against the will of the people of Gaza and against the will of the Egyptians, is that not forced immigration? If you say the reasons why some certain social things in the United States are not going the way they're supposed to go, like healthcare, accommodation, and all of that, is because the illegal immigrants are coming in and they are changing the whole thing. So right now, the social benefits cannot go across because the government is taking care of more people than it's actually supposed to take care of. If that is the logic, and one of the logic against your immigration stand in the United States, why can't you follow that same logic with the Egyptians? Why Donald Trump? Why is it only America that should not be having immigration beyond its control? Why can't you afford the same sanity to Egypt? No, I guess when you're playing empire, the rules of the game are different. Rules for thee, but not for me. It does not make any sense. If you put, how many of, I think there are millions of people in Gaza. You take, even if, because I know they mentioned some other countries, Egypt was there, Jordan was there.
Egypt's president and the King of Jordan have both said that they won't take in displaced people from Gaza like you suggested. Is there anything you can do to make them do that? I mean, tariffs against those countries, for example?
They will do it. They will do it.
What makes you say that?
They're going to do it. Okay? We do a lot for them, and they're going to do it.
Mr. President, you've offered
as some other countries. So you move the population. Let's say you give Egypt, because Egypt shares a corridor, that Philadelphia corridor with Gaza, right? A border. You move them from Gaza, let's say 500,000. You move them from Gaza into Egypt. Would that not affect the government of Egypt? How you may not say, okay, no, we'll fund them. No, you will not fund them. It's still going to take up space in the country. So leave them in their ancestral land. And you stop bombing them in their ancestral land. Is that not a better idea? Is that not a better idea for Israel to stop its main? See, is it not a better idea for Netanyahu to stop his hard-handed military campaign? Yes, they said ceasefire. Even one of the things he has been saying himself is that the ceasefire is just only the first stage they will do. They won't do other stages. Blah 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 blah. He has been saying it. He has been saying it. Maybe the reason why they even asked for the ceasefire was so they can push the relocation of the people of Gaza. Just maybe. Because they said, okay, if you ask for the relocation when the military campaign is going on, the people of the Middle East will not be happy. So let us give them a show of peace, of ceasefire, so that they can take the population of Gaza. No. Let them stay in their ancestral land. It's better than Israel to face the path. That's why I say this idea of two-state solution that the United States keeps saying that it believes in. He does not believe in it. Because if you believe in the two-state solution, whether it's the Democrats under Biden or the Republicans under Trump, this idea of relocating the population of Gaza into Egypt will not come up. You should be pushing Netanyahu and his government to ensure that the state of Palestine is. Why has it not happened over the years? Because they don't want it to. They want to take everything and still come and take part of Lebanon, and still come and take part of Syria, which they have done, and still come and take part of Egypt. Yes, the greater Israel has some land of Egypt. Yes. Go and look at all these people within the Netanyahu cabinet. Go and look at the greater Israel picture they keep showing. It also takes land for Egypt. So the idea of two-state solution is non-existent. They don't want it. They don't want it. Instead, they would rather carry the people of Gaza. As if, you see how I say people of Gaza, they had a country at one point. They want to take the Palestinians as if they are not human beings and just throw them like objects into different countries and completely forget about the problem of Palestine. See, I've said this several times, right? And I'm going to round off with this. I've said this several times for we in Africa to realize that what has made me really aware of this is this situation between Israel and the Palestinians. See that whole talk of human rights and all those things that the West keep using to distort countries across the world. That whole talk of human rights, they don't mean it. Because there is no greater disrespect for human rights than what we have been seeing in Gaza for the past 2 years now. None. They tell you one thing and then they support something else entirely. So if we in Africa are going to learn anything from this, is that there nothing determines your existence. We in Africa, nothing determines our existence and our sovereignty quite like strength, because this world is might is right. Might is right. It's painful, but that's the truth. So if we are going to ensure Africa's survival, it's for us to become strong. Because the people who are looking away are not just looking away, are actually supporting what is going on in Gaza with the Palestinians. Don't think that when it comes to you, they'll give you a different treatment. No, don't think so. Don't think that when it comes to, because we've even seen their history with Africa. We've seen their history. What's the difference between the way they are treating the Palestinians with the way many of us, many African nations, even Africans in general, have been treated? I can even say Africans have seen worse, way worse. Do you get me? So for us to preserve Africa, for Africans now to begin to, focus on making ourselves strong, militarily important, economically important, politically important. That's why in the previous segment, I said we need more sophisticated diplomats in Africa. We need sophisticated diplomats in Africa. So when we can build these three things across the continent, different African nations are strong in this area. And in that way we can protect ourselves. The reason why NATO never marched into Russia is because they know that when they march into Russia, they'll be in for it. Russia is strong. That's why they're trying to use Ukraine and say, okay, what can we get something here? It's the same thing. They look at China and Taiwan and Philippines and Japan. It's what they're trying to do. Because they know they cannot take the Chinese head on. They want to try to weaken China. The way it failed with weakening Russia, with Ukraine, is the way it's still going to fail with weakening China. But what I'm telling you is that they did not easily just march in compared to what they did in Libya. They just marched into Libya because Libya was weak. It had the money under Gaddafi, quite right, but didn't have military might. So to preserve the existence of Africa, of the African people, is for we to get serious about building Africa strong. Economically, military, politically. So let me know what you think about Donald Trump suggesting that to get rid of the Palestinian problem, just throw them into Egypt and several other countries in the region. Let me know what you think about. I think it's a disastrous idea, but let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your family, your friends, everybody, so that we can amplify Africa's voice and Africa's interest in a global scale. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. And just to remind you that our African media movement is now live. Ukweli is live. So if you want to join me as we enlighten Africans on its geopolitical and economic interest in the multipolar world, use the link in the description and also on the screen. Thank you so much for joining me this episode of The Amanda Show. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.